Good afternoon. I'm very excited to be able to talk to you a little bit about biologics, which are exciting new pharmaceutical agents that are available for the treatment of patients with nasal polyps. Are biologics available in Egypt? Yes or no? Okay, well, I'm sure they will be soon. You heard an excellent discussion of the biologics with Dr. Kern yesterday, but I just want to review a little bit about their activity and why they're so interesting for us in treatment of nasal polyps. Currently, there are about 5 monoclonal antibodies, biologics, that are actually being studied in chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyps. Xolair, or omalizumab, is an anti-IgE compound which has been out for several years and in the United States is poised to receive FDA approval for treatment of nasal polyps here any day. Resmizumab, or Sincare, is an anti-IL-5 agent that is primarily being used to treat asthma. Mepolizumab, Nucala, also has an indication for treatment of asthma. It also is an anti-IL-5 agent. There is benralizumab, or Fasenra, is being studied right now in the treatment of rhinitis, also an anti-IL-5. And then the most exciting agent for us is dupilumab, or Dupixent, which is an anti-IL-4, IL-13 agent. All of these medications have impact on the inflammatory pathways, the T2 inflammatory pathway, specifically involving eosinophil activation and recruitment, as well as B-cell maturation and working in that pathway for all of these. Another agent that is currently being studied in clinical trial is itocamab. Itocamab is a particularly exciting agent. It's an anti-IL-33 agent, and it involves IL-33 is present in the epithelium, so it's very, very high in the inflammatory pathway. So we think that this agent specifically may have very, very significant benefits for polyps and sinusitis. As it stands right now, it is being studied, but we don't have any information to report on it. This is where we stand with the literature currently. For the most part, what we have is these agents have been studied, but the studies are very small, phase 2, phase 1 type trials, and the follow-ups on most of these agents to date have been very, very short. So the data really for the majority of these is very early. But some of the results have been fairly impressive, so we're interested in seeing what the long-term results in bigger phase 3 type trials of these agents will be. That's for the bulk of the agents, but of course for dupilumab it's different because dupilumab now has a very substantial phase 3 trial that has been completed and published. This is from Lancet in 2019, Klaus Bockert's study on the efficacy and safety of dupilumab. And this was a study that was quite impactful, a very large study with the Sinus 52 component, having 448 patients in 14 different countries. And the important findings of this study were that polyps were reduced with the agent that was given at week 24, so 6 months of treatment. Patients had reduction in their polyp size, and they also had reduction in their congestion and nasal obstruction. And they also had an objective improvement in their CT scan appearance as well, with the Lund-Mackay score improving as well. These were very difficult patients. These were patients that had very severe nasal polyps and sinusitis. Almost 2/3 of them had had at least one previous sinus surgery, and 15% of them had had greater than 3 surgeries. Also, a very exciting finding I noted with these particular studies was the fact that the sense of smell, 79% of the patients were actually anosmic at baseline, and improved to about 30%. So nearly 50% of the patients had significant improvement in sense of smell with these agents. And actually, looking into the data a little bit, you see that the sense of smell recovery is actually fairly quick in those individuals, usually within the first 4 weeks in those patients who get benefit. This is the important picture from the Liberty paper from Dr. Bockert here, and it's a very busy slide, but what I want to show here is that one thing that we see is that, yes, there was significant improvement that was seen in nasal polyp score, significant improvement in both the short-term and in the long-term treatment, significant improvement in nasal congestion in the short and long-term treatment, but this is what I want you to notice. When you take the patient off treatment, the nasal polyps come back. And they were coming back fairly quickly within probably about 10 weeks, 12 weeks or so. Patients are having significant worsening of their polyps. When you take them off treatment here with regard to their nasal congestion, you see within about 3 months or so, their congestion scores are getting pretty close to what they were with no treatment at all. So what that means to us, or what that's telling us, is these agents can work. Dupilumab works, but you have to use it for it to work. And if you stop using it, it doesn't work, and patients get bad again. They have symptoms that get back to their similar levels that they had before. So our world changed when the FDA approved these treatments in June of 2019, so that's a very significant time for us, because I do believe that we're going to measure our world in the treatment of chronic sinusitis with polyps before approval and after approval, because our world is definitely changing with these new medicines. And you will notice our friends at Sanofi. We love Sanofi. They're doing great things, and they're supporting this meeting. Thank you, Sanofi. But they are also going to make about $10 billion, they estimate, on dupilumab. So this is a very, very expensive and very costly drug. And clearly people are excited about it, so we need to kind of understand when it's appropriate to administer dupilumab for our patients. So this is the latest that came out in the EPOS document that has just recently been published online, literally within the last couple of weeks. And you'll see that the guidelines for treatment with a biologic agent are based on a patient's symptoms, they're based on the tissue eosinophilia, based on the number of courses of steroids that the patient has received. They're also based on symptoms of anosmia and presence of asthma. You can feel free to take a picture of this. This is taken from the EPOS document. So, I'd like to introduce you to two very special people. I have 4 children. These are 2 of my children. That's Grace on the right, on my right, your left, and that's Benjamin. Benjamin just graduated from business school. I'm very proud of him. Grace is a senior in design school, and she's doing wonderfully. But both of them actually have severe asthma. They've been afflicted with this all their lives, and so I was confronted with the treatment, their treatment with biologics here in just the last couple of years. And so it got me thinking very deeply about what are the potential risks and what are the costs of using biologics. When you're treating your own family, your own blood, it becomes very significant. And so I thought a lot about it. So bottom line is, what are we trying to accomplish in treatment of CRS with nasal polyps? We're trying to make our patients feel as well as possible, but at the same time, we don't want to bankrupt them, right? And we don't want to kill them. All right, and those are very important considerations when we're talking about use of biologics on both situations. All right, so how do we measure cost and health quality improvement? Well, health economists use a term called the quality adjusted life year to determine the value, the cost that can be paid out to improve a person's quality of life or health. All right? 1 QALY is 1 year of perfect health. And so if a drug improves the quality of life 50% for that individual for 1 year, then that would equate to a 0.5 QALY. All right, that's health economics. I'm not a health economist, but this is what I've been taught. In the U.S., health economists will accept about $150,000 to $200,000 per QALY. So if you have a drug that improves quality of life at that dollar value, then it's assumed to be okay to do that, to treat with that type of medicine. All right, so we can look at omalizumab, for example, in asthma and its cost, and the estimated improvement or the estimated cost per QALY with omalizumab in the United States is $287,000. That's a lot of money. When you compare mepolizumab for treatment of asthma with standard of care type treatment with just inhalers for asthma, we do get some significant improvement in quality of life for the patient. There's an estimated gain of about 1.5 QALYs, which is pretty significant for the patient. But when you start doing the cost evaluation, you see that the current cost of mepolizumab per vial is about $2,500 per vial in the United States. So that works out to almost $32,500 per year. To achieve a QALY at $150,000 per QALY, you'd actually have to reduce the cost of the mepolizumab to $932. So in other words, drop the cost by about 2/3 to make it somewhat cost-effective from the health economist standpoint. And really, to get it down to about $50,000 per QALY, you got to drop the cost to $266 per month. And that's just ridiculously cheap compared to what it is right now. So it's about 1/10 the cost. The bottom line, again, it's a very expensive medicine. When you compare the cost of FES to medical therapy, now this is not including biologics, it's just medical therapy alone, you see that there is significant benefit of FES despite the costs involved compared to the medical therapy. It's estimated that FES will become cost-effective compared to medical therapy at about 3 years. So if you're able to do a surgery every 3 years, that's about the cost of medical therapy. It's about the same. If you throw in biologics now, the cost is going to skyrocket for medical therapy, and FES will become that much more cost-effective a treatment. And what about safety? You know, safety of these agents is a very serious issue. To date, all the data looks good with regard to these agents. There's no doubt. Adverse reactions are reported 80% of the time or more. Now, what does that mean? That's things like, you know, respiratory tract infections, sinusitis. I mean, that's what the FDA data says. But in reality, the reactions and the side effects are very, very minimal, and they're very self-limited for the most part. Dangerous reactions like anaphylaxis or cardiovascular issues just not seen with these agents for the most part. The safety of dupilumab, for the most part, again, very safe agent. The one issue that people are noting right now is keratoconjunctivitis. Patients can develop keratoconjunctivitis. It is recommended they see an ophthalmologist if that happens. Some of these patients do have to come off the medicine in these cases. But I do raise the question as to whether these are going to be safe in the long term. Remember, we have to continue the treatment for them to be effective. So we have other corresponding biologics out there like Enbrel, which has been out for quite some time, and in fact there may be an increased risk of cancer with the treatment with Enbrel. Omalizumab's now been studied because it's been out for quite a while, and there's definitely an increased risk of thromboembolism with omalizumab. Now, there's not an increase in malignancy risk, but there does seem to be an increase in risk of thromboembolism. So, again, these are powerful agents with a lot of potential side effects. And the truth is that we just don't have a lot of data yet. These agents are just coming online. But as we start collecting long-term data over 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, we might start seeing some very significant side effects. So the bottom line, biologics are here. They definitely are going to have a place in the treatment of chronic rhinosinusitis with polyps. They do work, but really at what cost? Frankly, they're just too expensive. They're too expensive in the United States, they're too expensive in Europe, and they're certainly going to be too expensive in Egypt. We really need to figure out how to get the cost down. And really, what about the long-term risk? So far, the data looks good, but there are subtle things that are going to show out in post-marketing analysis as we look at these drugs 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road. And I just point out as I leave here, PPIs, or proton pump inhibitors, have been available in the United States for a good 20 years, and yet now we're just starting to get data that's just coming out 20 years after the fact about the possible risk of esophageal cancer with these drugs, as well as kidney failure with these drugs. So again, long term, we're going to start collecting data that'll be very helpful to know what their ultimate use is going to be. So thank you very much.